Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We're in Spark and Hoe Committee room at County Hall, Burnfield. Can I just give everybody the usual reminder about turning your microphone on when you're speaking and turning off again when you've finished. And this is the first meeting of the municipal year, and we have one new member to the committee, Mrs. Hack. So welcome, Mrs. Hack. And also welcome back to Mr. Ozzy O'Shea, who's the Cabinet Leader Member for Highways and Transport. Maggie Wright's given her apologies for today's meeting. The first agenda item is appointment of chairman, as this is the first meeting of the council year. And Mr. Gillard, Mr. Tony Gillard, was nominated as chairman-elect at the annual meeting of the council on 18th of May. Can I have a proposer and seconder that Mr. Gillard be appointed chair, please? Thank you. Everybody in favour? Thank you. So, Mr. Gillard, you are now appointed Chairman of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the 2022-23 year, and I will hand over to you for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Ewan. I'm delighted, obviously, and welcome this afternoon to everybody, in particular Amanda, your first meeting. Thank you, and Ozzy, thanks for coming along. So the next item on the agenda is to elect a Deputy Chairman, and I move from the floor, Keith Merrick. Do I have a seconder? Agreed? Thank you very much. Welcome aboard, Keith. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 22. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 22 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Agreed? Thank you. Item 4, question time. We have received no questions from the public. Firstly, moving on to item 5, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7, 3 and 7, 5. We have received no questions from members. Item 6, to advise of any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There are no urgent items. Declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members have any interest to declare?
Chair. Agenda item 10, special educational needs. Just for the record, I have a non-registrable interest in this. My wife is employed by this county authority in that environment, but no decisions to date will have any financial bearing upon myself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Les. Anybody else? Got that, Ewan? Happy
Yes.
to move on to item 8 then, declarations of party whip in accordance with Overview and Scrutiny Procedure Rule 16. Are there any declarations of the party whip? No. Item 9, presentations of petitions under Standing Order 35. I have not received any petitions. So, item 10. Our first report relates to special education needs school transport service provision briefing on pages 11 and 22 of your agenda. And oh, sorry, Pat. Sorry, Pat. I'll ask Pat Clark to introduce it. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with an up-to-date situation on the performance of the transport service for Leicestershire County Council Special Educational Needs. First section of the report goes through the policy and the framework of previous decisions. Pick out a couple of items on there. So in February 22, the MTFS for the County Council year 22-23 to 25-26 was approved by the County Council, which indicated and had a section on SEN transport. In March 18, the Cabinet approved the home to school transport policies, which include both mainstream and SEN students. In September 2019, the Cabinet considered a report which detailed the implementation of the County Council's home to school transport policy, with the exception of the SEN policy on post 16 to 18 transport. This was due to a High Court challenge. Whilst the challenge was unsuccessful, it meant that there was a delay to the full implementation of the home to school transport policy, specifically in the introductory of the personal transport budgets, PTBs, until the start of this current academic year, 21-22. Leicestershire County Council's Strategic Plan 22-26, it is noted that demand in EHCPs for children with SEND has also increased significantly, leading to rising demands for specialist SEND provision. Okay, some background information. There are three key elements to SEN transport expenditure. These elements are demands, growth, the number of pupils eligible for SEN transport assistance, pupils' needs, the increased complexity of needs of pupils needing to travel, and market forces and competitions, fuel costs, inflation and wages, all of which are fully detailed in this report. From the information that we have available, there has been a national growth in EHCPs and SEN support, with a 38% increase over the last 5 years nationally. In Leicestershire, EHCPs have grown 54% over the last 5 years, which is significantly higher than the national picture. In transport, we have seen a 25% increase in demands for SEN transport over the last 2 years. This is forecasted to continue for the foreseeable future. An indication of that, 2013-14, the total number of pupils qualifying for transport assistance was 1,512, which has risen in this current year to 2,427. This is predicted to rise to over 3,000 by year 25-26, although our eligibility criteria has not significantly changed over this period. The information that we have received over national benchmarking data indicates that Leicestershire's transport cost per pupil last full financial year of 1920 was 4% below the national average when compared to other local authorities. Nationally, it is estimated that 15% growth in the number of children gaining an EHCP by reasons of social, emotional and mental needs. This is a picture that's also mirrored in Leicestershire. Moving on. Pupils' needs. Alongside the growth in numbers, we have seen an increased growth in the needs of the children over the last 6 years. Service users, distances and the complexity of the pupils that we are transporting has an increased cost year on year. Every qualifying service user who receives traditional transport has their needs assessed to ensure that that transport provided is safe and suitable for their needs. The most cost-efficient and effective way of providing transport is to have as few contracted vehicles supporting as many pupils as possible as to gain maximum capacity on board our vehicles. The more pupils that require solo transport, the higher the vehicle numbers, the higher the vehicle costs and also the staff costs. Detailed in section 17 and 18 are the complexities that we have seen in the growth between December 2018 and December 2021 with regards to children or pupils that need supported help. Pupils that have high medical needs may require transport to be specialist trained staff. As a result, these costs are typically higher than normal transport. The average costs per mile for tenders received for high medical needs contracts is over 130% more than conventional standard needs transport. The same applies for pupils that require wheelchair access transport or specialist vehicles. On average, a wheelchair accessible tender is 95% more expensive than those on standard vehicles. Moving on to the section on market forces. Over the last 6 months, fuel prices have increased by over 25%. The fuel element of a contracted price is generally around 10 to 12%. But we've also seen challenges around resources, availability of resources, and also increased in cost of resources. Over the last academic year, we had 248 contracts handed back to the council as they were no longer viable by operators, all of which required to be retendered. We have also had to renegotiate a number of contracts over the course of the last year. We've been working hard on a number of positive interventions to make the service as efficient as it possibly can, whilst meeting our legal requirements. These include annual transport reviews and retendering, transport optimisation using specific software, targeting utilising of our own internal fleet services, increased training provisions for internal and external operating staff, and the post-16 policy, all of which are detailed in the report. I will draw your attention to section 33 of the report, the PTB policy for post-16 to 18 students that we had changed last year. This change resulted in 241 new PTB arrangements. The net result of the new PTB offer in cost reduction in transport expenditure was estimated at 650,000, with a full year estimate of 880,000. To ensure transport provision for the new academic year, we require a number of key dates to be met. Unfortunately, last year we've seen a number of late applications that caused significant pressure on the service, and arrangements were not in place for the start of the academic year. Early indications indicate that this year we may have a similar trend. Financial context. Sections 36 to 40 lay out the financial challenges the authority have got. With regards to SEN transport, our forecasted costs for this current year are 15.9 million. These forecasts are due to rise to 20 million by 25-26, with housing and economy growth around the county likely to put further pressure on the County Council's SEN provision. Therefore, work will continue to ensure efficient services are delivered at minimal cost where possible. Into the conclusion. SEN transport has seen significant growth over the last few years. With this growth forecast to continue, and in light of the County Council's overall financial situation, within the E&T department and working in collaboration with the Children and Families departments and across all departments in the authority, we will continue to manage demand and drive efficiencies across this service. Members are asked to note the content of this report. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for that, Pat. Quite comprehensive. I'm now going to ask members if they have any comments or questions. I've got Les first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Pat. Challenging reading, I think, is polite. So I've only really got two questions because the facts are the facts are the facts. As corporate parents, our liability and responsibility increased to the age 25, if memory serves me. Does any of this, because it seems to finish at 18, have we got any sort of future responsibilities that will carry into that now 25-year age group as the corporate parents? But equally, what a difference a day makes, I guess. On bullet 23, you talk about the increase in fuel costs. What a difference a day makes. They're not gone up by 25%. They've gone up by 100% or more. So, and I know it's crystal ball stuff, but we would all anticipate that we will see those fuel costs declining at some point. Not tomorrow, not next week. What capacity are we building in, or allowance are we building in on top of what's already here to actually accommodate and account for those potentially increasing costs? Because you're absolutely right. Number of service providers have handed the contracts back. In a different place as a taxi licensing authority, we know that we've lost taxi drivers. So it's not a rosy picture, but our statutory responsibility is increasing. So I'm just curious what kind of possible crystal ball gazing you've done about what on earth is going to happen, particularly because of the fuel costs at the moment. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Just in specific answer to your question, as far as corporate parenting is concerned, absolutely it is till 25, but after 18 it changes again. So there is a post 16 to 18 provision, and then from 18 onwards it changes again. So we do look after children over the age of 18. Fuel costs, yes, it is a challenge, and it is a daily challenge. When this report was published, it was a different case, and it has been over the last 6 to 12 months, really. We are trying to optimise as much as we possibly can using our own fleet, but then equally, when we do make a provision, trying to fill that provision as best we possibly can. However, we do that under the backdrop of understanding what the child's or the student's need is, because not every student can travel, as the report indicates, with others. It's a very, very complex picture. What we try to do is work with our suppliers, though, or the taxi operators, to try and mitigate where possible those increasing costs and try to understand those increasing costs. And then if there is compensation required, work with them for the compensation that's required.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Thank you, Pat. I've got Richard next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Pat, thank you very much for a very detailed report. I was wondering if you can help me basically just try and understand where the increase is coming from. It's been mentioned that it's gone up by 54% in the last 6 years. Was that from a starting point that was kind of below the national average, back towards the national average, or are we essentially going up in excess of everywhere else? Therefore, potentially need to be concerned about where it's going in the future. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. The question is probably better answered by our Children's and Family Services team, because there might be a number of influencing factors as far as that's concerned. So I can take it away and ask for that question to be clarified by the Children's and Services Family team.
And you wanted to come in before a member?
If that's all right, sorry, absolutely, we'll come back with a detail on that because we need to speak to them, because it's Children's and Families who deal with the assessments, it comes within the area. But my understanding was we were starting from a relatively high base national average. However, can I caveat that, please? We'll come back to detail, but I don't think we started from way below the national average at all.
Thank you, Anne. I think Les just wanted to come in on something.
Yeah, just a member's benefit, really. As I've already declared, my wife's heavily involved in SEN, and she's actually just been on a autism awareness course. Now, Jackie's been in special needs for 24 years, I think now. And she came back with a really stark statistic, which answers part of Richard's question. It is when she entered special educational needs, it was 1 in 300 children were on the autistic spectrum somewhere. It's now somewhere around 1 in 60. So there is no answer to some elements of the question, Richard. That's the challenge. Why is there's been exponential growth? That's one for the medics to come up with as to that side of the equation. But as a stark statistic, in 20 years, it's gone from 1 in 300 to 1 in 60. It is a huge increase, and it is our statutory responsibility to handle this one way or another. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Les. Amanda, my apologies for keeping you waiting. Good question.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it was just thanks for the report. It's obviously start reading in terms of what the impact is on the authority, but it's certainly something we have to provide, and it's important that we do. With regards to the increase in individuals requiring special educational services, whether that's in specialist schools or in mainstream with support, I think my sort of interest is how are we using the data we have to inform children and families about where special schools need to be placed? Are we looking at the most environmentally friendly way of getting children to school, and are the schools all in the right place? I think that that would be quite useful to know. It's interesting. Les said, "What a difference a day makes." Well, actually, yesterday Les and I were on a different committee, and we discussed the complaints document that came in from Simon Parsons. And what was really interesting is the correlation between the complaints that are coming in from the SEND in terms of education, but at SEND in terms of transport. And we've acknowledged that the transport decisions were late. I know this is something I have asked a question at full council. We know that that's going to happen again this year. What mechanisms will be put in place to ensure parents are communicated with as quickly as we can? What can we do to prevent it's really stressful in your child into any school, more stressful if you've got a child with special educational needs too. So what can we do to preempt some of that and support those parents to ensure, whilst we might not be able to make quick decisions, but keep them up to date and keep them informed, which I think it can be as helpful as getting the placement in place. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Pat, can you respond?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tack. Picking up your first question, we are working with the Children and Families Department and also with our corporate centre as well on improving the information that we've got readily available to us. There's a new system just about to be introduced in Children's and Family Services to support the information the county holds on all children. So the picture is evolving, is what it is. A lot of improvements have been done since last year and following last year's performance, but it is very, very difficult. And it's very, very hard to predict what's happening in the future, and making sure that the school that is close enough to that child is the right school for that child, which is the other big challenge with our children's team. With regards to the report that you viewed yesterday and what did happen last year, one of the real messages we got was around communication and delayed communication. So I think some of the parents quick carers made some comments around, I wasn't aware that this was a problem until the 11th hour. And the importance this year for us is to make sure people are brought along the journey with us. If there is any problems at all in arranging the transport, that the parents or the parent carers are let know that, and alternative arrangements can be made. So it is going to be another challenging year, but all I can try to do is make sure we make it as smooth as we possibly can.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just to add to it, was just an observation on Mrs. Harrick's point about, the planning and the, where are the locations, where's the transport? Often we find, not just with SEN, with, developments and, other facilities, the transport's the end thought piece. Where we need to get people to, we've got a special facility here in a county somewhere else, and it's make the transport fit, make the transport work. So if we have to transport a child from one side of the county to the other, we have to just do that. It's very difficult to get in at an early stage to get the transport as part of that key thinking at the outset before that facilities actually comes about, because there's much bigger factors at play. And equally, it's harder on something like special education needs, because obviously your population going into that changes over time. So, when people's needs will, they come into the system, they're there for a number of years, and then they'll move on, and then new ones will come in, but their needs are different, so they need to go somewhere else. So it's really difficult, but just an observation. I mean, it would be lovely in an ideal world that we could, and we're all joined up, we had that conversation, and then the settings are the developments are brought forward. However, unfortunately, it does tend to be transports at an end thought, and we're left to make it work, provide the transport regardless of whether it's a mile down the road or around the corner or 50 miles into a different county.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Chair. I can appreciate the parents' concerns for last year, but there was a lot of late applications that came into offices, and I would like to put on record my thanks to the officers for the work that they did. They was under a lot of stress. Some of them went off ill, so my concerns are that we get it right. We work with parents, and do that in the future. But I'd like to put on my record my thanks to the officers that really did put a lot of work in last year to try and get children transport to the right places at the right time. But as I say, we're looking at it this year, and hopefully we will be better this year, but we're still going to be coming under a lot of pressure.
Thank you, Ozzy, and thank you to Pat and Anne for your responses. I think this committee would also like to thank the efforts of the team for the hard work they've put in over the last 12 months. Agreed? Thank you very much. If we're all finished on that, now I'll move on to item 11. It's the next report relates to the Members' Always Fund, as set out on page 23 and 28. Anne Carruthers, Director of Environment and Transport, will present the report. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. This is bringing an update on the Members' Highway Fund. It's been operational for a year now, or just over a year now, and we just thought it'd be worthwhile to bring you a bit of an evaluation of what's happened and therefore how we've shaped the current year's scheme. As you're aware, it was an entirely new scheme that was brought in last year. It commenced around about July, and with each member having 25,000 to spend on highway and environmental improvements for their area. In total, for each, across all our members, we received 515 applications. So, a considerable amount of applications and requests for action came forward. 184 of those weren't progressed. Now, for a number of reasons, either wasn't allowable on the highway, too costly, wasn't affordable within the budget the member had, withdrawn by the member for whatever reason, they had higher priorities, etc., or it was covered by works that we were doing anyway in our ordinary work programmes, in which case we take it on under that and the member didn't have to pay for it and could develop and deliver something else with their funding. Most popular types of requests were our vehicle activated signs, to address those communities with concerns around speeding, and our mobile vehicle activated signs and various forms of street furniture. But however, I would say because the scheme progressed just from July onwards, we were on the back foot last year, because we were setting up the scheme new. Members were then over the summer challenged to, work with their communities to develop up what it is they wanted. So we didn't get many requests into the back end of the year. That then kind of reflects on the latest figures are, and just an update from the figures in your report, because they were April ones, when we had to draw up the report. But the latest are, we've got 17 completed schemes, 129 are in delivery. So, actually in progress at the moment, and the rest are going through the development phase. So there is still a lot of work happening. They will be delivered, although obviously technically, you know, ideally we'd want to do it within the financial year, but you know, we did start from a standing start last year, so I think we've progressed it relatively well, and members will see the outcomes for their communities. In terms of lessons learned, setting it up, I think for us there was considerably more officer resource required than we'd anticipated. And no doubt members feel the same from their point of view, that there might be more activity from them and resource required from you to put forward your things and get to the end point of what you were spending your 25,000 on. I mean, just to give you an example, some members submitted up to 30 requests each, and now that requires, you know, investigation work, design work, costing work, etc., for the member then to decide, no, I'm not taking forward 24, I'll take forward these 6, etc. So there was a lot of resource, but you know, it's learning on all sides, isn't it? And we certainly recognise we could have streamlined the process a bit more, and also the value of some officer time up front, that maybe, you know, we could eliminate 24 of those 30 quite early on in the process and not have to, you know, go through more work from both the officers and the members' point of view. And a current challenge is providing accurate cost estimates in a very changeable cost market. I just heard this morning construction inflation is running at 24%, you know, so when it comes into, never mind some of the materials, even just things like, you know, weed spraying costs an awful lot more. A weed sprayer costs an awful lot more now than it did 6 months ago. You know, so it is challenging on that side of things. So what we've done for this year's scheme, we have got off to a quicker start. We've briefed members. We've launched an online application form for you, which we hope is far more streamlined and you've not got all that paper to deal with. And what's included, we've included a drop-down menu, again, to try and make it harder than make it easier than it was for you last year. We certainly don't want to make it harder for anybody. You know, a drop-down menu of things that you could spend your money on. But there is the kind of other category if you want a more bespoke scheme, in which case that's when we want the early, you know, officer contact to really work out how we could do it and what we could do for you on that one. So hopefully you're beginning to see the benefits of that through that new online system there. We're continuing with the members panel. We'd set up a members panel just to help us as we shaped and evolved it, given it was a new system. And then every so often we had some left field decisions, you know, because we had some quite wide-ranging requests for spending. So that panel has been really, really instrumental and helpful to in the shaping and taking forward the delivery of the Members Highway Fund. So we're really keen to keep that one going as well. The position and funding set out in the table in paragraph 17 for you. Overall, you can see, same as last year, £1.4 million is available to deliver the scheme for the members. In terms of resourcing, it's a really difficult one for us. We have had difficulties to recruit into posts that are about specifically delivering, both in the officers who would deal directly with you and in the delivery teams, be it our traffic and signals team, which deals with things like the MVAS, etc., or our highways operational side where we do the vegetation works for you, etc. We've had some real difficulties in recruiting there just because of the current market. And last year, this particularly impacted in some of our other work, because what we've had to do is take, you know, downgrade that work and put it on hold while we've resourced the Members Highway Fund, because it has been very intensive, but we've been doing our best to get it delivered for you. One impact was particularly our community speed initiatives. That was impacted by COVID because we couldn't do the surveys, but now that, you know, we've been able to, over the last 6 months, a year, to be able to do that. Unfortunately, we haven't had the officer resource because it's been diverted onto the Member Highway Fund. We're now looking at how we can get that up and running again. However, my only thought at the end is, you know, the recruitment market isn't easing off. You know, we'll continue to try and recruit into posts. We've got loads of vacancies across the department, but, you know, we know Members Highway Fund is a priority, so we are ensuring we can get resources into that. I'll stop there, but happy to take any questions from members too.
Thank you, Wayne. Members, any questions? Les?
It's not a question, Chair. It's actually just an observation, because I actually don't see any negatives in the Members Highway Fund. I think it's all very positive. I think the ability to engage at parish council level and grassroots level has been nothing other than positive. I think, you know, if we all put ourselves in the real world, anything to do with construction trades is on the back foot. It's in huge demand and undersupply. Supply chain is still not right across the globe. I'm just really positive about it. I think it's been a brilliant initiative. My projects are just starting to be delivered. I'm actually out with one of the highways engineers next week, I think it is, actually visiting and going around the locations just to make sure that where I want them is the right place. But it's just a great positive project for me, Chairman. So thank you very much, and to your team.
Excellent, thank you, Les. I'm going to Keith. I'm just coming.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thanks for the report, Anne, and the update. Thank you. I envisage when this plan was launched last year, it was like probably like you're doing your very first parachute jump out of a pit. Oh, sorry. I thought my mic was on. I'll start again. Is it on? Did you get any of that? Parachute jump and all the rest of it? Great. But again, I'd just like to say with my colleague, I think it's working well. And the applications I put in to start with, some of them were dreams and they were very quickly told no and explained why. And I totally understand that. And the new portal, I think, is absolutely brilliant. And as I said this morning, I submitted 6 now, and all 6 have been accepted on the portal, and I've got reference numbers for them. And the only feedback I've got since this morning's feedback is you can't upload photographs and screenshots when you click other. In the text box, it doesn't allow you to upload any documents, which I think would speed up the process. But apart from that, yeah, thank you. Well done.
Excellent, thank you, Keith. David?
Yes, similarly, I've got nothing but praise for this project. I wish we'd actually started it years ago. But it's fine. I'm just looking at the report again. It says that allocation of budget to vegetation works must be received at the end of May. I don't know whether we can stretch that a bit, because the weeds in the gutters are now coming on rather strongly with this latest rain. So I'll drop you a line on that. On a further point, we're covering the county with MVASs, which is going to make the county safer, hopefully. But I hope we're not putting too much strain on the police, because obviously we're going to be producing reams and reams of evidence of excessive speeding, and we'll be asking them to take the matters further. Do the police have the resources to do the necessary? Because we know how stretched they are, as all public services are. But are we in conversation with them to ensure that we can implement enforcement as we move through this system? But like everybody else, I'm a great supporter of this scheme.
Thank you for them positive comments and questions, David. Anne, would you like to answer them?
Firstly, on your vegetation point, the request by the end of May is so that we can programme it into our works that are already happening. Things like weed spraying happen at specific times twice in the season. So, you know, if you've got the opportunity to add into that, we can add into that contract. If not, it could be difficult for us to do. Some vegetation works are obviously very seasonal and you can't do them at certain times. So that was the reason about getting it in early. If you genuinely can't, we'll certainly look at it, but we couldn't guarantee we could put it into this year's programme. But, you know, so my plea would be, and the same with all members, on anything you want, just get it in as early as you can, really would be my plea. In terms of the police resource, from MVAS or VAS, you cannot enforce it, but it's got to enforce legally, it has to be calibrated to DFT specification. And that's a specific process, and we don't do that in MVAS. The speed cameras get them, and that's why are calibrated in that way, and that's why they get enforced and through the police system and the courts. However, that doesn't apply to MVAS.
We're going to have all this documentation, aren't we? which shows you that 85% was below 30 miles an hour, and there's still a need to catch the idiots who belt along at 60 or more through a 30-mile-an-hour limit. Now that information will be sent through to the police, presumably. So we do want to ensure that for the credibility of this scheme, that the people who actually seriously put us at risk on the roads are being picked up and summarily dismissed off the roads, hopefully.
I can come back on that again and say we cannot enforce from that data on the MVAS. What we can do is we can supply it to the police, and if there's significant incidents of speeding, they can then decide to put their mobile speed cameras on it, in which case it can be enforced from those cameras. So they use that data to then decide how they're deploying their mobile speed cameras from which they can enforce. Okay.
Absolutely right. Thank you, David. And just touching on Anne's point, in my division, the information from vehicle activated speed cameras is fed to the police, and we notice quite often that speed cameras are in those locations because they're obviously looking at it, identifying the problem, and then sending the speed camera up. So it does work. I've got Amanda next.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the next question for me is because we've had such an increase of vehicle activated signs, is how does that feed into the data in terms of making the roads safer? What will we be looking at long term through some of these activities about the difference it will have on the highway in our communities? Because obviously we've identified things that we think will make our own community safer or easier to move around. Are we going to do any evaluation of that, or what do you think the plan is sort of going forward on those?
In terms of the data from the MVAS, I mean, that will just get, I don't mean just, but it's fed in. It's another data source for us to look at. I mean, we have set criteria and when we will take interventions on safety measures. It's seven accidents within, a kind of cluster, etc., or higher than the average that you would expect for that type of road. So we do, from our accident data, statistics, we will look at that and identify the areas where we think we've got where we have got road safety problem on that criteria. Now, this is just more information that can feed into that to build up that picture. It's another data source for us to help us, get an understanding of what's happening on the network. What we'd say, however, is in terms of where MVAS are going, which is why, for instance, we as a county council and the Highway Authority perhaps haven't done any interventions in that location before, despite the fact the community's obviously got concerns, is the data at the moment wouldn't support that in terms of there isn't actually either a speeding problem or an accident problem. It doesn't take away for a minute the community concerns, because we all know people have perceptions and can be concerned about things. So therefore the MVAS supplied through the Member Highway Fund can be a really positive thing for that community. Absolutely accept that. All I'm saying is those sites wouldn't necessarily have met our criteria for any kind of safety intervention. But it does now begin, and we can use that data over a period of time to add to that layer of understanding exactly what's happening, because things change over time.
Just to come back on that, I mean, so I am also a member of parish council, and we've had the mobile cameras for quite some time, and there is a street in the parish that has got constantly over 30 miles an hour. More, I think it's starting to drop, but you're looking at 40 or 50% of the cars are travelling over 30 miles an hour. And it's obviously a real concern. I suppose for me is, where does the data go and what's next? Was speed activated signs, we've obviously going to have many of them, but when we show there's a speeding issue, will there be other safety measures that we'll look to put in place? Is that what we'd normally do?
If there's a speeding issue, we firstly would look for enforcement of that. So we'd look at the police to enforce that. Where we would then look at, you question what next, what other interventions. Where we would do interventions is where it meets our criteria for accidents. So the speeding, would need to translate into accidents, and nobody wants to see that. No, we absolutely get that, but unfortunately, because we've got limited budgets, we have to prioritise. So we have to treat the sites where there are accidents. So if there are accidents arising from that speeding, we would then look at what's the appropriate intervention. Can we do traffic calming? Is it more signing? Is it, what can we do in that particular location? If, however, it's constant speeding and there isn't a road safety issue, i.e. accidents, it's a case for the police to enforce that, because it wouldn't trigger us for an intervention.
Microphone on now. Yeah, I'd just like to say that with regards to the question raised by my colleague on my left, the data, because we get them from our systems, it's what you call a lagging indicator. The incident's happened and the vehicle's gone and all the rest of it, and you get it downloaded monthly, weekly, whenever, I can't remember when. But we have got a system where we get our data and we share it with the local Barden beat team. We've made great relationships and forged robust relationships with the Barden beat team, and they can't be out every day, all of the time, doing speed checks. But if they've got training to do for new PCSOs or people new in the team, they have to do refresher training on using the speed camera systems. It's an ideal opportunity for them to look at the data we provide and say, well, if we're going to do the training, the vehicles are speeding along Grange Road, predominantly on a Friday afternoon between 3 and 6. Let's do it then. And you reap the result. If you go out and reach out to the police teams and forge them relationships and mention that training on the camera systems, they will work with the data and hopefully capture some naughty boys and girls. Thank you. I think it's a great system.
Thank you, Keith. No, did you indicate? No. We all through? Well, I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Ozzy, but I thought I'd bring you in last. So there you go.
I was last at cross country. I was last at many things. But there we go. No, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to put my record of thanks to the officers again. Louise Bennett and her team have done an absolute sterling job. And I think, something we started from scratch here, that they've really put their effort in, they've really done well. And this new online activation scheme where we can actually go online and put our requests in. I've had so many people come back to me to say how well they're happy with it. And I think, it's all credit to the team, and it needs to be fed back on that, members are happy with what we're doing, and thank the team for doing that. And as I work closely with my local beat team, and if we've got a particular problem, they'll come out with a handheld. It may well, that street may well could do with that. And likewise with HGVs, I've had success recently where they've been in our village and stopped and reported HGVs for breaking the law and the weight limit. The HGVs can go through weight limits if they're delivering. They've got business, but unfortunately in certain areas, and many councillors contact me about problems with HGVs. If you contact your local beat team, they'll go out and look at that as well. So, as I say, I'd just like to end with thanks to Louise and the team. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ozzy, and I'm sure members will echo your sentiments and thank the team for the sterling work. So if we're all through on that, move on to the next item, which is the date of the next meeting. The next meeting of this committee is scheduled to take place on the 1st of September 22 at 2 p.m. And then item 13, any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent. As I stated earlier, there are no urgent items. So thank you for your attendance and draw this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.